that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder hope gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Energy Week with George Harvey and Tom Fennell.
Hello.
The famous Tom Fennell. I always point that out because it is relevant.
Better than infamous.
And what we're doing is just reporting the news and energy in the last week. Today being Thursday, the October 22nd. We start with Thursday, October 15th, and run up to Wednesday, October 21st. And so I put these things up at my website. If you want to find them, you can refer to the website on the date given. It is goharvey.wordpress.com. And you can go there and read the articles we reference if you want.
Well, yeah, follow the link.
Follow the link. That's right. The little blue thing that gives the name at the end. So
and some of them are worth reading.
Some of them are worth reading,
for us to talk about
some of them are not.
On the air.
Some of them you can't even get to.
Oh,
but we try.
But yes.
Okay. So should we just start?
I think we might.
All right, let's do that.
The
first item here is from Clean Technica. It is Thursday, October 15th. Navigant Research has concluded that revenue from the global market for solar PV combined with energy storage microgrids will expand rapidly through 2024. Navigant Research says the market for nanogrids based on PVs and energy storage nanogrids is likely to reach $23.1 billion, up from its current $1.2 billion in 2015. And nanogrid is a term that just came into my consciousness.
I don't think there's any functional difference between a microgrid and a nanogrid.
Well, I think a nanogrid is a little bit...
It implies it's smaller.
Yeah, but a microgrid can be for an entire town. And yeah, I think a nanogrid, I don't know.
Might be for one building.
Yes, right.
Well, some of them are.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of them are.
Well, I think that a person who has got his own, lives off-grid, you know, if an off-grid family has its own nanogrid.
I guess you would call it that.
We could call it nanny. Let it watch the kids.
I wouldn't say this really describes it, but it is a descriptive. Small modular distribution networks. They're considered the antithesis of the bigger is better economies of scale thinking that guided energy resource planning over much of the last century.
Right.
But it worked for the last century.
It worked for the last century.
But it stays over.
Right. One of the things about nanogrids and microgrids is that you're talking about managing them, and people who live off grid, you know, manage their electric use because they have to.
Well, if they use too much, they're out of luck.
That's right.
They're sitting there in the dark.
That's right. That's right. So you can manage nanogrids and things with your own computers, but in the last century, you know, when the system was originally designed, the grid, the computer was a slide rule.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
exactly.
You know. Okay, and you can't manage much with a slide rule aside from your books. Okay.
And all you can take back or take away from that graph is how quickly all this is happening.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So it's happening very, very fast. Okay, our next item comes from Business Standard, taking forward an announcement made by the Indian Prime Minister on August 15th. The Union Ministry of Power has ready to plan to electrify 18,500 villages in 17 states over the course of 3 years. Of these villages, around 3,500 would get their electricity through off-grid or renewable energy solutions. And honestly, I think that is very optimistic in terms of the use of the grid. I think that it would make much better sense to have a much higher number than 3,500 of them go to microgrids.
I think ultimately they're all going to be coupled together.
Yeah,
it's going to be a mega grid of microgrids.
I think that's what it'll wind up being, yeah.
I'd mention the names of all the states here, but nobody else.
Nobody's going to care, you know. Some of them you might have heard of if you like tea or whatever, you know. But nevertheless. Okay, should we go on? Our next item is from FT Advisor. Net retail sales of ethical and socially responsible investment funds in the UK have more than doubled from £206 million in 2013 to £460 million in 2014. However, the UK has some catching up to do. Funds under management in this area have grown from 13.3 trillion at the start of 2012 to 21.4 trillion at the start of 2014 worldwide.
So we're seeing quite a bit of growth here.
We're seeing a lot of growth, and this is in the area of ethical and socially responsible. Ethical. Thank you, Tom. And socially responsible investment funds. And you know, it reminds me of a person who told me, if you're talking, he said, I went to Wharton School of Economics, and I have no idea what the term business ethics means.
Isn't that telling?
Yeah. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, business ethics, really, if you want to know what it means that you do things in such a way that you're unlikely to get caught and thrown in jail. And he said, even when it comes to trouncing on other people's rights, if a businessman is going to make more money by trouncing on people's rights and taking the risk that once in a while he'll have to pay somebody off, if he's going to make more money doing that than not doing it, he has the responsibility to trounce on people's rights, because it says right there in the business, the company document. What's the document called? The corporate papers. That his job is to
of incorporation.
His business is to make money. It doesn't say his business is to respect the rights of the people he does business with.
Well, there was a new form of corporation in which they do incorporate that. It was a B Corp or something.
B Corp,
like that. Yep. Which exists in Vermont, not in every state.
Not in every state, but in a lot of states now. There are more and more. I think Vermont was the first state to do that.
It certainly was one of them.
And Green Mountain Power was the first utility to become a B Corp.
That's interesting.
That's I could be wrong, but that's my recollection.
One quick takeaway from what you just said.
Yeah.
There are a number of ethical or SRI funds that consistently outperform their peers.
Yes.
So you're not necessarily going to lose money.
Yeah.
If you do the right thing.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. And you know what? When you consider some of the shenanigans that have been going on in Wall Street recently, I think that there are certain areas of, if I were managing an investment fund, there are certain companies I would just ditch.
Yeah, I hear you.
VW is obviously one, but ExxonMobil is another.
Yeah, I hear you.
And I would just get rid of them because I wouldn't trust them to have any value at all 2 years from now. Okay, we're up to Friday, October 16th, and this came in from Business Green. The U.S. clean tech industry employed more than 1.47 million people during the second quarter of 2015, making an increase of 16% from the same period last year. The institute said, what institute said? I don't know. July 2000. Obviously, I referred to this thing that was in the middle of a
Ecotech Institute.
Ecotech. Okay.
That's right.
Is it right?
Yeah,
really?
right.
Okay. Said July 2015 saw the number of new jobs being created in the industry more than double year on year. August 2015 saw an increase of 57%. This is from Business Green, so you know it's true.
Yeah. I ran into a paywall on this one.
Did you?
I had to go searching around the corner.
Oh, poor Tom. Business Green. Okay, I'm going to try to remember that Business Green has a paywall. Has a paywall. It's not very friendly to us. Okay, I'll try to remember that. I'll probably forget. It's just life. Long Island Exchange provided this piece of information. A national network of utility interest groups and fossil fuel industry funded think tanks is providing funding, model legislation, and political cover for anti-solar campaigns across the country, and would-be solar power owners could pay the price, according to a report from the Environment New York Research and Policy Center. And by golly, does that surprise you?
No.
Somebody is out there trying to prevent people from exercising their democratic rights and putting solar panels on their
solar
roof.
energy.
A tax on solar energy, absolutely. And they will tell you, you put solar power on your roof, it's going to kill birds. Really, they think it's a pond, and they try to land on it.
Yeah.
So even though it's not flat, you know, they'll tell you all about what's wrong with Ivanpah, and they'll tell you all about why we shouldn't allow any farmer to put up solar panels in his fields, and they'll tell you all kinds of things about if your neighbor puts solar panels on his roof, it's going to cost you extra money from the utility because they have to pay him extra for that solar power.
Right.
And you know, there's a lot of lies and misunderstandings and
bringing it a little bit closer to home.
Yeah.
A newly announced Republican candidate for governor
Yes.
is proposing a 2-year moratorium on industrial scale renewables.
Let me guess. This is Brian Doobie.
No,
It's not.
No.
Oh, okay. I didn't get that. Who is it?
I don't remember his name.
Okay, we'll try to keep forgetting his name.
You'll hear about him again.
You'll hear about him again. Okay. I've been seeing stuff from Brian Doobie about what's wrong with wind. And he says industrial wind is causing this kind of problem, and we're getting this understanding of it from, and you know, he makes vague references to sources, and he doesn't say what the sources are. And I haven't seen any answers about what the sources are.
Well, this article that you just referred to, it talks about ALEC, American.
Of course.
That's the Koch brothers.
Absolutely.
And the Heartland Institute,
Which is the Koch brothers. And the Freedom Partners, which is the Koch brothers. And they've got more of these things than you can shake a stick at. The State Policy Network has got at least one cell. I'm sorry, it's a nonprofit organization, not a cell, but it is a cell in every state in the United States. They're very proud of this. They are distributing money in order to get control of the Congress, both houses, and the White House, so they can, you know, maintain their business position.
Well, this is that New York group, and it's Al Gore. I don't even recognize him.
Al Gore, he's in the middle.
Right in the middle.
Yeah.
Yep.
The reason you don't recognize him is because somebody has widened that whole thing.
Yeah,
Look at that.
I made it fit the.
Oh, you made it fit. Oh, you nasty character! You made all those poor young ladies look like they're very wide.
and
You made Al Gore look like he has a round face.
But I still didn't recognize him even in the normal view.
Well, I've seen him recently, and his hair has gone about the same color as mine.
Yeah, let's see what
Al Gore and I have something in common.
What is that?
White hair.
The white hair, yeah. Well, that group there is called Environment New York.
Okay.
And the woman on the right is Heather Leibowitz. She's the director.
Okay.
So they're making some progress there.
Yeah. Okay.
Back to you.
Moving on. Here we go. KERA News. Oklahoma is on track for more than 900 earthquakes this year, many presumed to be linked to oil and gas production. Cushing, the key pipeline and tank crossroads for the oil industry, just experienced a 4.5 quake Saturday. That was the Saturday before October 16th. The tremor came right after a government report found nearby geologic faults had awakened and reactivated. Oklahoma, which used to be about as stable as you could be in terms of earthquakes, is
I got a number on that.
Is getting more earthquakes every year than California is.
Yeah.
Even though it is much smaller. And how do you explain that? Well, you explain it because people are pumping water underground to get rid of it, and they're lubricating all those joints.
They're doing all sorts of bad stuff.
They're doing all kinds of things. They have no idea what's going on down there, except for one thing, and that
They don't
is
want to know.
they're pumping toxic chemicals down there because they want to get rid of them. And it's really like, you don't think there's going to be any consequence of this?
Well, there's two takeaways here. The
Okay.
first one is just a statistic.
Yep.
In 2008, the state experienced how many earthquakes do you think?
6.
Two.
2, okay.
Last year, 584.
Well, man.
Duh.
Duh.
And there's some pictures of the oil
Fracking?
storage Cushing, the oil storage facilities in Cushing.
Oh,
They are numerous. I mean, there's probably more there than there is in the rest of the country.
there might be more oil storage tanks in Cushing than there are people.
Probably correct. You know, they've just developed into a local storage because they're right in the heart of the country, and they can pump in any direction.
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
there's going to be consequences from that, and it's not going to be comfortable. Actually, there are already consequences from it. What happened?
I don't know.
Ah, there you go. Okay, we're up to Saturday, October 17th. From Yahoo News UK, or maybe it's Yahoo News UK. When 149 countries with 87% of the global population and 86% of the climate-altering greenhouse gas emissions had submitted their carbon curbing pledges to the UN, Climate Action Tracker, a tool developed to model changes, said the pledges would put the world on course for an average global warming of about 2.7 degrees Celsius.
I'm having trouble here.
You're having trouble?
Yeah.
Why?
A panel came up on the right-hand side of my screen, and I can't figure out how to get rid of it.
Well, anyway.
And I'm still trying to figure this one out. New software is available from Apple. That's not it.
Oh, well. So what's happened here is that 149 countries, which is the overwhelming bulk of the countries in the United Nations and so forth, have come up with their climate plans in preparation for this upcoming conference they've got going in Paris in November and December. And they've all, said that they're going to do wonderful things. Some of them have said they're going to do wonderful things. But the result is going to be 0.7 degrees Celsius more than what anybody says is acceptable.
Talk to the people. I'm trying to figure out what's going on wrong here.
What is acceptable is higher than what is probably safe to deal with. And we will see some more of that later on. I'm going to go on to the next thing here,
On to the next one.
Yep. From Reuters. Climate change is taking a heavy toll on Canada's far north. Buildings collapsing as melting permafrost destroys foundations, rivers running low, wildfires all drain limited finances. With a population of less than 50,000, which is really kind of amazingly low when you consider that we're talking about an area that's probably twice the size of Texas. They have 50,000 people there, and those 50,000 people spent more than $140 million in 2 years on problems linked with climate change.
I'm sorry, I lost track. Now I'm pulling it back.
You got to find it. Okay, well, you're back to where you were there. Oh, look at that. That's a beautiful picture.
This is what you were talking about.
Is that picture for climate change? Whoa, that doesn't look happy. There's a helicopter.
That came from the article.
From the article about the Canadian North?
No, from the article you're talking about.
You weren't paying attention. I've gone beyond that.
Climate change, the state of emissions?
No.
Okay,
just keep going to the next article. Yeah, keep going to the next article. Okay.
Oh, Canada's
Canada. I got a good picture there you go. I knew you had some good pictures of this.
I got a good picture here.
Okay, here we go. What do you suppose happened to those houses?
Well, if you read the legend, it says houses undermined by melting permafrost.
Yeah, they've built these houses on a foundation which sits on bedrock. And what's bedrock? Well, in this particular case, it's ice. And when the ice melts, the building falls down. And you know what? I think those people should sue Exxon. I think they should have a class action suit. Exxon knew this was going to happen 35 years ago, and they kept on selling gas and oil because it was profitable, and they never told anybody.
Devastation! That's unreal.
Yeah. What's the deal with the picture on the left?
It's just an ice. It's just an ice storm on cars.
Oh, I see. Okay.
It's the frozen north.
The frozen north.
The frozen
north. Well, it is the frozen north.
The one on the right is the one you want to look at.
The one on your right. You wake up in the middle of the night, and all of a sudden your house is tilting by 10 degrees. This is not comfortable.
I would guess.
And why has it happened? Because somebody lied to make money. That's why. Somebody lied. They've been caught. There's no question about it. They knew. We've talked about it. We've shown their graph. We've the little girl who won the science fair project by showing climate change in 1981 because her father was a climatologist with Exxon. Exxon knew, and so did a lot of other people. And they kept it to themselves because they were going to make money by keeping it to themselves in the good old-fashioned way that they knew that they could do.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, maybe there's another way to make money. Let's see what it is. In other words, they were lazy, in addition to being dishonest.
Dishonest more than lazy, I think. A little bit of both.
A little bit of both. Well, I think a little bit of lazy and a lot of dishonest.
Yeah, bingo.
Yeah, okay. So anyway, that's climate change in Canada's far north. Are we ready to rock and roll here?
Yeah, I guess we are.
Okay.
Something else weird is happening.
Okay.
I can live with this one, I think.
Okay. Environmental Defense Fund tells us that Texas primary grid operator ERCOT, is that a good name? Released an updated analysis of impacts of the Clean Water Plan, and there are some bright spots. ERCOT's analysis confirms that compliance with the plan will keep Texas 2030 electric goals below 2002 prices when Texas first opened the electricity market to competition. So people are going to be switching to renewables in Texas, and the price of everything is going to go down as a result.
Well,
what are they doing on the screen, Tom? I only see the.
Well, they're just erecting panels in Texas.
Okay.
Texas is interesting, though. It's particularly San Antonio.
Yeah.
Because they're going big time on renewables.
Right.
And they're specifying, at least to get a grant or a loan, everything must be made in San Antonio.
Well, okay.
So they're bringing jobs in.
Yeah. Well, we could do that in Brattleboro. We could say all the solar panels that we put up in Brattleboro have to be made in Brattleboro.
Well, that's going to be hard to implement.
I don't think it would work. Okay, but they can do it in San Antonio. They got a lot of people there. Are we ready to?
I think we'll move along.
Ready to rumble.
Yep. Yeah,
okay. Menafn, MENAFN, which is a Middle East, North African financial network. Menafn.com tells us that oil and gas industry bosses pledged to curb gas flaring as they sought to boost their image ahead of the UN summit later this year. The leaders of 10 companies that produce 20% of the world's oil and gas recognize that current greenhouse gas levels are inconsistent with a global warming limit of 2 degrees Celsius. Do you suppose they're ever going to get around to telling the American Republican Party this? Man.
I hear you.
20% of the world's oil comes from companies that realize that we've got a problem and something has to be done about it, and they're talking about it anyway. And the people in the Republican Party are saying, "I wish the Pope would stick to religion and let scientists deal with science." They don't let scientists deal with science. If they did, they wouldn't be climate change deniers.
Well, the Pope's got a master's degree in chemistry.
That's
anyhow.
right. He's a scientist. We got a scientist Pope. What a cool thing is that?
This particular article, it's only talking about stopping flaring.
Yes.
Which is a plus. It's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it saves them money if they can collect that flare gas.
Yeah, and it makes the things worse if they just release it instead of flaring it.
Well, when I first flew into Saudi Arabia, that was many years ago.
Yeah.
When going over there for a job, I looked down and there was flares all over the desert.
Yes.
And 3 years later, they were gone.
Really?
Yeah.
You sure this wasn't flaring in the desert because Saddam Hussein was lighting up the oil the oil wells?
Well, that was Kuwait.
That was Kuwait. It wasn't Saudi Arabia.
No, they just started collecting the oil, the gas from the flares.
Right. Well,
it becomes just for economic reasons.
Yeah, it becomes economical. You got to remember that when people started flaring, the price of oil was about $3.50 a barrel.
Yeah, something like that.
And
I think 50 cents.
Well, it might have
one
been.
time. Yeah.
Might have been. I don't know. But the price of oil was very low. But in those days, you drill a well, you go down 100 feet, and you have a gusher. And then your big problem is to try to cap the gusher before you lose a lot of oil, because you don't want to lose oil, because that's worth a few dollars a barrel. And Environment? What did you mean by environment?
Hadn't been invented yet.
The environment hadn't been invented. That's right. Okay. So are we ready to move?
Yeah, we'll move along to the next one here.
Sunday, October 18th.
Coming closer to home.
This is the Valley News. We're still on Sunday, October 18th. Even before Entergy, remember that name, announced that the Pilgrim nuclear plant would close, Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker had filed 2 bills already. One would encourage Massachusetts utilities to enter into long-term contracts with renewable energy producers, and the other would raise existing caps on the state's net metering program. And these are
one of them I got a little takeaway from the article. The
Yeah.
first proposal of the 2 that Charlie Baker announced was it's going to help the state tap into Canadian hydropower,
Yeah.
of which there is a surplus right now.
Yes.
And the second would allow homeowners, businesses, and local governments to sell excess solar power they generate back to the electric grid for credit.
And there's
which
one
makes sense.
Yeah, there's one thing about this story that I haven't quite figured out, and probably nobody else has either. Although you never can tell, they may actually be talking about it. And that is, what is the effect of this going to be on Cape Wind? Because the Cape Wind project is basically dead in its tracks because the utilities who are going to be buying the
There's
power
no market for the
have
Cape
said,
Wind, yeah.
we aren't going to buy at that price. And it looks to me like they would be a whole lot better off if Cape Wind went in, and maybe some kind of deal will be struck there. Certainly the Audubon Society supports Cape Wind because of the numbers of birds it will save.
But that's an interesting
Well, you know, I mean,
too.
if you think about it, I read an estimate. In 2012, there were 440,000 birds killed in the United States by wind turbines, but the electricity that they produced displaced electricity from fossil fuel plants that would have killed about 9.5 million, which means that the wind turbines in 2014 that killed 440,000 birds, on balance, saved the lives of about 9 million birds.
I'd say that's a fair balance.
Yeah, I think so. So, you know.
Well, we're hearing a lot of stuff being thrown out by people who oppose these things for whatever reason.
Yep.
And, you know, they got a right to oppose it.
They do?
But they don't have a right to lie about it.
Well, they have a right to lie about it. And, truth be told, they have a right to lie as long as they're not trying to separate you from your money in the process.
Well, that's what it's all about, isn't it?
I think, yeah, when there are certain organizations that I think are actually doing that, and, you know, the RICO laws should be brought into play against them because they're lying to make money. And lying to make money is called fraud. And that's what Exxon was doing. They were lying about climate change in order to keep being able to produce oil. And when you do that over a period of time, twice in 10 years, and it seems to me they did it continually for 35 years, you get to a point where you're in violation of the RICO laws, and that means that you can be thrown in jail for being a racketeer. In other words, the fossil fuel industry, in my opinion, is guilty of racketeering, and they belong in jail.
Well, there's other people who think that too, so we got to see how it shakes out.
I think it's going to happen. It's you know, I mean, the people, you can bet the people at the Sierra Club and Greenpeace are talking about this, and they're probably people in the Northwest Territories of Alaska who are saying, how am I going to deal with this? My house is tipping at 15 degrees. Oh yeah, these people down in the United States at Exxon, they have money. Maybe I could use some of that.
Yep. Good picture.
Let's put the picture on.
That's Pilgrim.
I know, but but it's not on.
Duh.
Now I can scratch my nose.
I'm looking at that, and I don't see cooling towers.
You don't need cooling towers because they're using
the ocean.
They're using the ocean.
The ocean to cool.
Now they're not actually on the ocean itself. They're on Plymouth Bay, but they're using the water in Plymouth Bay to cool. And of course, that kills a lot of fish, and people get upset. But you know, who cares? It's just a bunch of fish, right?
Well, they're closing it.
They're closing it. And it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. And of course, we've got other places where they're trying to close plants too. And we will get to those, if not in this broadcast, in some other. And
now from
Massachusetts
to Nebraska,
to Nebraska.
Now we're going to be talking about wildfires.
Yeah, Omaha World Herald says Nebraska's Pine Ridge is down to the last big stands of ponderosa pine. Most of the state's elms are gone. The cottonwood is in decline. The ash, beloved for its brilliant autumn yellow, will disappear soon. That's probably the emerald ash borer. Trees are under assault through combined effects of climate change, invasive species, and changes in land use.
Look at that graph.
Oh,
Which
that's
is graphing
horrible.
wildfires.
Yeah,
And
which have been killing
what
the
an
ponderosa
incredible
pine.
increase.
Well, you know, that's what happens when you get all those scientists lying about climate change, saying climate change is happening. In order to convince everybody that's happening, they have to come up with phony graphs. Now, this isn't a phony graph.
I don't think that's a phony graph.
No, this is wildfires happening, and they are driven to some extent by climate change and to a large extent by an effect of that climate change known as drought.
Yep. Well, but yeah, it's all related there.
It is not fun. We should try to do things that are fun. Climate change is not fun. Okay. Are we up to the omni-channel media?
Yeah, there's stuff here, but I think we can pass on to it.
Okay.
We go to the next one.
Monday, October 19th. Ministers for the Environment, Simon Corbell, a minister for the Environment, Simon Corbell, told a Canberra tech conference that the country needs an orderly exit plan from a dependency on coal-fired energy. He said that the solution for Australia's electricity needs is a responsible policy that encourages long-term investment in emerging microgrid technologies.
Microgrids again.
We've heard that term before.
Yes, we have.
That's an interesting photograph. When I first saw it, I thought it was all snow.
Yeah, no, that's a desert.
That's a desert.
That's sand.
Sand in Australia.
Well, I guess there's a lot
Some
of
of the-
deserts in Australia.
There's a lot. Some of the sand is white. What can you say?
Let's see
The
what
only
else
thing
is
about
there.
that photograph is that it looks to me like it might have been reversed, because the signs for the road are on the right side. And I think they drive on the left side of the road. In
They
Australia.
do. Yeah, that's a good point. It has been reversed because if you look in the, that's a screen capture.
Yeah.
And if you look at it, I'm wrong.
Okay.
That's a road sign.
Okay.
I think you're right, though.
Yeah.
I think you're right.
Well, anyway, what's happened is it's interesting that the energy minister in Australia is saying we've got to start learning to get along without coal, because Australia has the biggest coal market in the world.
Yeah.
It's huge.
It's a big industry
and
in
the
Australia.
coal industry
They have a lot of power.
has a lot of power. They lost some of that power when they lost their lapdog when he got taken out as prime minister, Tony Abbott.
That's an interesting development because something like that just happened in Canada as well.
Absolutely.
And there's a guy over in England that's scaring everybody because he's further to the left than
and-
Bernie Sanders.
And
he may very well be the next
Well, he
one.
should, when you consider what they're doing over there. For crying out loud, they're shutting down support for their renewable power because they don't want to have taxpayer money going into subsidies. And then what do? They spend billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars on a nuclear reactor, which is going to sell its power at double the subsidized price of solar power.
Sounds like a subsidy to me.
It sounds like corruption to me. Anyway.
I think you're right.
Yeah. Okay.
Pretty picture of Australia, though.
Yeah, it is a kind of a pretty
Like
picture.
you said, it looks like snow.
It looks like snow. I don't think it would work if you tried skiing on it. Maybe it would.
I did ski on a sand dune in Saudi Arabia.
I'm not surprised.
It's not very,
Not fun.
it's
Not as much fun.
Not
But
as much fun, 'cause
I
you don't go
understand
fast.
that you can ski in Dubai.
Yes, you can. On real snow. Well, there's artificial snow.
Yeah, they have
snow.
they have an artificial ski slope in
Yeah.
a shopping center.
It's indoors.
And I've been told by
Indoor
somebody who's
ski
on
slope.
it, that you can stop and get coffee on the way down because there are stores all along the side of this thing, places where you can pick up things to eat, whatever you want.
Never quite made it to the Emirates.
Okay, should we move on?
Why not?
Okay. United Nations Chief Environment Scientist Jackie McGlade, I'll just say Jackie.
I think Jackie is right.
Okay. Has attacked the UK government over its stance on renewable energy subsidies. She told the BBC the UK was sending, quote, a very serious signal, a very perverse signal, end quote, by cutting support for renewable energy while appearing to continue heavily subsidizing fossil fuels.
Didn't we just mention that?
We did indeed, but today, and this is not part of this show, but it will be next week, they announced that they are subsidizing nuclear, having kind of denied that they were going to be doing that for years. They have now said, well, we are going to subsidize.
Well, we got the figures. Nobody's just calling it a subsidy. But,
yeah, well,
but
you know, it's like
it's an enormous subsidy.
you know, you've heard call a spade, and what they're have been doing has been calling a spade a hammer. So, should we go on?
Yeah, moving along.
Green Biz. Now this is back to
we're back to the back to the good old USA.
Good old USA, and a reflection of what's been going on in Massachusetts. New York's Westchester County will soon procure clean energy for around 75,000 residents. Over 15 municipalities are banding together to aggregate their demand for cleaner power sources and lower their utility bills through competitive bidding. The project is New York's first implementation of community choice aggregation. This is a system that was used successfully in a bunch of places, and one of the places we've seen it and actually talked about, although it was quite a while ago, was Greenfield, Massachusetts.
Absolutely, that's exactly what's happening
where they
there.
switched to 100%. They don't call it 100%. It's actually slightly less than 100%, but it's close.
Renewable.
100%, almost 100%
Almost 100% renewable.
And it lowered the electric bills.
By the way, it's voluntary. You don't have to belong.
That's why it's not 100%.
Yeah, no, I mean belonging.
Yeah.
You can buy your power from the power company.
Yeah, you can pay
or
extra.
Or you can buy it from the CCA.
That's right. You can buy it. You can pay extra
and the same
for fossil
power
fuels
company
if you want.
maintains the lines.
Yes, of course.
I mean, it's a win-win situation, really.
Except some people decide they want to lose.
That's
They're
their
allowed
problem.
to.
But
Okay.
yes, Greenfield is a good example of something like this happening nearby and successfully.
Right, and it's happening now in New York State. They've allowed community aggregation, and they're doing it in Westchester County. And 15 municipalities in Westchester. Westchester County is fairly heavily populated. This is a lot of people.
It's right next to New York City.
Right, it's a lot of people.
When I was a kid, that's where the rich people. When they made too much money to live in the Bronx, they moved up to Westchester.
There you go. That's why all the bridges on the Sawmill Parkway are so low.
Yeah, you've told me that. yeah.
They want everybody to have his own car and no buses, please.
No buses or trucks. Well, it's
Right.
yeah, that was no commercial traffic on that road.
Yep. Okay, we're up to Tuesday, October 20th, and we have this from Clean Technica. A 10-year review of renewable fuel standard by researchers at the University of Tennessee found that the RFS is too reliant, this is the renewable
fuel standard.
Right.
Yep.
On corn ethanol and is not a bridge to renewables. It says the production of this biofuel is resulting in additional water and soil problems as well as hampering advancements in other biofuels. And they're not kidding.
I think this ethanol for fuel was a scam from the beginning.
It was.
It's just a wet.
They knew right from the beginning.
To Archer Daniels Midland.
Yeah, they were doing. What they were doing was they were getting ethanol, but they were using gasoline to grow the corn. They were using petrochemicals to fertilize the corn. They were using gasoline to harvest the corn. They were using petrochemicals to transport the harvested corn. And then you change it all into ethanol, and you say, how much ethanol did we use? Did we make 1 billion gallons? How much gasoline did we use? 1.2 billion gallons. What are you getting out of this? Nothing. You're getting a bad deal. So, I'm sorry. If you're a farmer in Kansas, I don't want you to lose your job.
Yeah, this was a scam right from
the
beginning.
But there are better sources for this. And corn is terrible. It's a terrible crop on the soil.
It probably couldn't be worse.
Yeah, well, tobacco's worse.
Tobacco's worse.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cotton is pretty bad, but
they don't make alcohol out of tobacco.
They could.
Yeah, they could.
Maybe they'd make good alcohol out of tobacco. Okay. All right, we're up to Bio-Based Digest. How about that for a name of a publication? I'd like to be the editor of Bio-Based Digest. In Canada, the Liberal Party, under the leadership of...
We just mentioned.
Yep, 43-year-old Justin Trudeau, who is, what's his name, Trudeau's son?
Pierre
Trudeau's son, swept to victory in the Canadian federal elections. The Liberals have won at least 184 seats, 14 seats more than needed to form a majority government. The Trudeau government is pledged to, quote, make critical investments, end quote, in the clean energy industry. And he had three things that he promised, and I forget what two of them were, but certainly one of them is to get serious about climate change and renewable energy and things of that nature. So
I got an interesting picture here of the results of the election.
There you
party,
go. Mm-hmm.
And it seems that Canada kind of mirrors the U.S. in that the Atlantic provinces, which is their New England,
Yep.
all voted for this new Liberal Party.
Yep.
The blue states, the dark blue states there, which are right near our dark blue states in,
Yep.
in the Midwest, voted for the Conservatives.
Yep.
And they have a third one there called the New Democratic Party,
Right.
which is sort of center.
The Liberal Party is actually kind of center, and it's old. It's an old
It's been
party.
around a long time.
A long time.
Yeah.
But the New Democratic Party had very largely replaced it in the last election. The Liberals had got to the point where they weren't even. There were some people kind of saying, I think these guys are out of business because they only got 15% of the vote or something.
They've kind of snapped back.
And they have snapped back, and it was Justin Trudeau who brought that about. And the thing that I find kind of interesting about this is there are a bunch of articles that have appeared in the news talking about how this is bad news for American conservatives. And it's bad news for American conservatives because these liberals in the Liberal Party in Canada are not going to agree with American conservatives about a lot of things.
For sure.
The thing that I see as bad news for conservatives here in the United States is that Justin Trudeau kind of showed that the mood had changed. And the American conservatives, when they say, well, what's wrong with, what does this mean for us, haven't figured out that the mood is changing.
Well, that seems to be true, and it seems to be true in the English-speaking world.
And what's happened in the United States, if you talk to Republicans, you talk to conservatives, the majority of them want to move on climate change and renewable power, and they want to do something about the problems that we've got. But the leadership of the party, the core leadership of the party, is all in denial.
Yeah.
And you look at the people who are running for president, and they're all, except for one or two, in denial about the whole thing, and the one or two really don't open their mouths very much. So
What's Trump's position on it?
Trump's position on climate change is that it's just nonsense.
Yeah.
At least that's what I try to get, what I gather. I mean, somebody asked a question about climate change at a Trump convention, and he said, climate change. Well, let's ask the people here. What do you think about climate change? And of course, everybody was saying, what, are you kidding me? Climate change? I don't get paid to believe in climate change. But Trump, of course, doesn't.
That's a good way of putting it, isn't it?
Trump has his own money. He doesn't depend on the Koch brothers. It's just that he agrees with them.
I think that frightens them more than anything else.
Frightens who?
The establishment. Because they can't control him.
Oh, yeah. Well, Trump is uncontrollable, and there's no way he could win a general election, and I honestly think that there's no way he could win the nomination. But if he doesn't win the nomination...
Not with the superdelegates, who aren't committed to anybody, except that they're part of the system.
Well, I think that what's going to happen is that Trump it's going to become clear to Trump that he can't win the nomination at some point, even if he gets to and he'll run as an independent, which is going to divide the Republican Party. But honestly, I think there's a possibility that the remaining Republican Party will divide over the issues of climate change and renewable power, and a big issue here is how powerful you're going to allow corporations to be, and whether they can deal with individual people in a way which really kind of pushes them aside, so that big companies can control the so-called free market. And I've got very conservative friends who say, yeah, they worry about that. There's one thing that they really agree with Bernie Sanders on, and that is the big companies are too powerful. Mm-hmm. Well, what do you do about that? Well, if it's a choice of Bernie Sanders or big companies controlling Washington, D.C. openly, the House and the Senate and the White House, there's going to be a lot of people defecting from the conservative cause.
I might expect that. I mean, you look at it, what is the difference that if all of the decisions are made for you by big government, or if all the decisions are made for you by big corporations?
Right, and you've got this thing called the Tea Party,
yeah,
and they're seen as super conservative, you know, and we don't want government in our backyards. Well, they don't want big business in their backyards either.
That's an interesting
So, you know,
speculation.
there's a conflict going on, which is an internal conflict, and it's going to have to be resolved if they're going to form a Republican government and have it be effective. And I don't think they can resolve it because they're in denial. They've got to face their denial before they can resolve it. Okay.
Well, it's an article of religion. It's become an article of faith.
I think it has,
It really
yes.
has.
Except that what they should be doing is letting science be dealt with by scientists like the Pope and take their and take their faith elsewhere. Okay.
Well, let's move from North America to Europe again.
Okay. Where is Europe? Oh, yes, of course, Germany. German industrial group Siemens AG unveiled a new DC solution that is not District of Columbia, it's direct current, for connecting offshore grid wind turbines to the grid, which can lower costs by as much as 30%. The platform involves a DC cable that can connect several of these platforms sequentially in a wind farm and then route them to an onshore transformer substation. Now that's
I read the technical stuff on this, and I'm still confused.
Well, you know what happened
They're
here.
converting DC to AC, then converting it back to DC.
DC, yeah, well.
And then converting it back to AC again.
You know, there's a lot going on in electrical power that I don't understand. It's not as bad for me as money. You put a dollar sign in front of a number and it just ceases to have any meaning for me. But here, I should point one thing out, which does have to do with money, and that is lowering the costs. It's not lowering the cost of offshore wind. It's lowering the cost of the cabling for offshore wind.
Well,
30%.
it's lowering transmission costs.
And
It's
transmission
lowering losses.
costs, right.
Yeah,
Transmission costs for offshore wind are a big deal. This
Absolutely.
is not cheap.
absolutely.
But and this will have an effect on the overall cost of offshore.
So they're
wind.
definitely onto something. And
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
I said, I read the technical article.
Yep.
And I'm left scratching my head. So
Well,
I don't know if they don't want us to know, or I'm just too far.
my
behind
guess
the times.
is that whoever wrote the article was a journalist.
Didn't know what he was writing.
He had no idea what he was writing about, and so when he started writing about technical stuff, he just tried to get it right, and he couldn't get it right 100% of the time.
I got a question for you here. Look
What's
up
that?
at the screen there.
Yep.
Now that's the offshore wind farm called Gwent y Mor.
Yeah,
That sounds to me like it's Welsh.
it is.
It is.
Yeah.
So that's not a German farm
Gwent,
there.
Gwent is it's GWYNT,
Correct. Yep.
and that means wind.
Wind.
As-
Okay.
I could be wrong about
No,
that, but that's
it
my
sounds
recollection.
good.
Is that
wind? Yeah, I can
and
see it.
more is sea, and so
Okay.
it's wind on the sea. That's my recollection.
I wouldn't argue
I
that.
could be
That
absolutely.
makes a lot of
I know
sense,
it does, but I could be wrong about Gwent. The more I know is the sea, and Gwyntimore is a really big wind farm off the north coast of Wales, which was put in. Those turbines were put in one a day.
That's amazing.
It is amazing. It's like you've got this thing that costs $8 million and is 35 stories tall, and it takes one day to put it in. Well, there's a lot of preparation that went into that before the day
sure.
that thing
yeah.
went in.
Yeah.
It had to go in on a foundation. But anyway, okay, we're up to Wednesday, October 21st. Microgrids work for utilities.
Microgrids
Yeah.
again. Yeah.
Look at that picture. My
Isn't
gosh.
that a beautiful picture?
Horrifying
It's
picture.
not a sunset.
No.
That's a fire.
That's a fire. It's like looking through the gates of, the hinges of Hades, as somebody I knew used to say.
But the
During-
good news is that already in place microgrids
Yep.
saved the day.
Yep. Let me read my spiel here, okay?
You'll tell.
Okay.
It'll tell it all.
During California's Butte fire, PG&E, which is the utility, asked Jackson Rancheria's microgrid to stay off-grid for 2 days. Then it turned out to be a week, and then things didn't work out for them, so the Rancheria stayed off-grid for 10 days. It marked the 14th time this year that the Rancheria was asked to go off-grid. Now, the Rancheria is a casino, hotel thing, which is and they had hundreds of people going to this thing because their houses were burning down or threatened or whatever. And that microgrid just sat there and worked, chugged along, even though they had transmission problems.
It was kind of an emergency.
It was a beautiful emergency shelter.
Yeah.
You know,
look what they say here. They transformed guest rooms to cot-filled dormitories to accommodate hundreds of people evacuated from nearby communities.
Yeah.
They never planned for that.
No.
But there it was.
Yep.
They took advantage of it.
Yep. And my guess is the cots were specially brought in from some sort of emergency place. But there it is. Yeah. And that fire was just horrendous.
Well, now we talked about fire in Alaska. We talked about fire in California. We talked about fire in Nebraska.
Yep.
And it's all caused by the same thing.
Climate change, absolutely. Okay.
Scary.
One step off the grid says Australia has not just reached socket parity, it has smashed it, according to a report from Beyond Zero Emissions. In most cities in Australia, the cost of rooftop solar is now less than half the price of grid-based power. Indeed, some of the utilities offer to install rooftop solar on your roof for free and charge only 11 cents per kilowatt hour for the output.
And they're not losing money. They're not losing money.
They're not losing money. They want that power, which is daytime power, because it's valuable.
Yeah.
11 cents is almost double what these utilities are currently paying for rooftop solar in a lot of places, and it's only half of what the normal daytime power is worth. Well, so, this is not a surprise.
Look up there and see the table we got there.
Yep.
It's the Australian power prices.
Yep.
They're written in dollars per megawatt hour. So what you got to do is put a decimal point in front of that.
Right.
And you got the cents per kilowatt hour.
Right.
Which compares with us, and they're getting charged 32 cents, 28 cents, 21 cents.
Yeah.
In Australian dollars.
In Australian dollars, they're about
6 bits.
Yeah, they're about 6 bits.
Yeah.
About 75 cents each. So
$30 is really $20, but
$30 is really $22.50.
$22.50,
yeah, something like that. $22. I think the Australian dollar is 73 cents, but if you think of it as 6 bits, you're going to be pretty close.
I think I got a takeaway here from this. Well, it basically says it predicts that within 10 years, nearly every home, and they're looking at their best city for solar, Perth. Within 10 years, nearly every home in Perth could have rooftop solar.
Yeah.
And the energy minister says that, well, rooftop solar is not just the future, but it could provide 100% of daytime demand by 2025.
Just think about that for a moment. Australia, which was pursuing coal so hard, and because Tony Abbott was worried about stranded assets, could be getting something for free instead. Why would you spend money harvesting your stranded assets when you can have what you want for free?
Well, you're making sense, And it looks
really?
like to sort of coin a word, the Australian people are voting with their feet.
Yeah, that's interesting term. Wow. Who'd have thought? Okay. And what we should do, we should talk about grid parity, because a lot of people don't understand grid parity.
Well, I got a takeaway here.
What's that?
Grid parity is the point where the cost of energy supplied from your own rooftop solar array or whatever falls below the cost of grid power.
Yep.
It's also known as socket parity,
right,
which is the title of this article.
But there is a problem with grid parity, and the problem is you'll read articles that say we are only 2 years away from achieving grid parity. But in Vermont, solar power for normal ratepayers achieved grid parity about 3 years ago. So what's going on there? And the difference is that when they say we're 2 years away from achieving grid parity in the northeastern part of the United States or whatever, what they mean is that if a power company wants to put in a utility scale solar farm, the cost of the electricity from that solar farm is going to be slightly above the cost what it's paying currently under current contracts to the current coal plants, which are going to be closing. And what you don't get out of that is, okay, you put solar power PVs on your own roof, and you are comparing the rate from your roof not to wholesale power, but to retail power.
Correct.
So
Yep.
there are big differences
difference
there.
between wholesale and retail.
Yeah, and there are many nuances as you look at these things closer, where you could say, okay, well, we've achieved grid parity on utility scale in the Northeast because when you're comparing solar power on the utility scale, you're comparing it with contracts that were signed 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, sure.
what does that mean? And so it's a very complicated thing. But what we're seeing is that the business of grid parity, and another one, just to make this even worse, when you look at power, you're looking at what's called the levelized cost of electricity.
Just about to mention that.
And the levelized cost of electricity, how do you calculate that? Do you calculate it?
I saw the
Yeah, but do you calculate it for over a period of 20 years? Or do you calculate it over a period of 5 years? Or do you calculate it over a period of 1 year? Or what?
Well, they have kind of determined that the life cycle of a rooftop solar is 20 years.
Yeah.
It'll probably last longer than that.
Yeah,
but
and
for this purpose,
the
they're saying
LCO
20
is
years,
going to
and
be
that's
20
what they're
years.
using for
Okay,
the
and what that
calculation.
means is you're comparing something that is warranted for 25 to 30 years, because that's what the rooftop solar warranties very often are, as though we're going to have to be replaced in 20 years, when in fact it might not have to be replaced for 80 years, which means that you're doing a calculation based on the first 20 years, and everything after that is free.
Yeah, really.
So what does that mean?
One of the things that's probably going to happen, though, at 20 years, they probably will be replaced, even though they're working, because there's better ones out there.
Well, I've thought about that, and I wonder. I really do.
Depends on how much better the new ones are.
That's true. Okay, we've got one more item here, and this comes from Clean Technica. An unprecedented alliance of heads of state, city, and state leaders has called for countries around the world to put a price on carbon. The call comes by way of the Carbon Pricing Panel, a group of world leaders convened by the World Bank Group President Jim Yong Kim and
Isn't that
IMF.
backwards? No, it's not. His
It
name
would
really
be.
is Jim, isn't it?
I think it is.
I bet it's not James.
Probably not. I think you
probably
said
laugh at our names,
backwards,
too.
and I was thinking Jim Yong Kim. His name backwards would be Mick Nyong Midge. Okay, where is this going? IMF Managing Director Christine Lagarde, and the people who are on this panel include people like, what's the woman's name who's the head of Germany?
Oh, I go all of them. Angela Merkel.
Yes.
Chilean President Michel Bachelet. That
Yes.
doesn't sound Chilean to me. French President Francois Hollande. Ethiopian Prime Minister Haile Mariam Desalegn. I can't say that one. Philippine President Benigno Aquino III.
And there's a name for you.
There's another Aquino in power.
Yeah, there is.
Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto. Governor Jerry Brown of California. Now that's a name I can pronounce.
Yes, Jerry Brown.
Of California, and Mayor Eduardo Paez of Rio de Janeiro.
Okay, now what we're talking about here is a bunch of people who
These are all
are
important people.
people. This is not a bunch of this isn't Larry Moe and Curly. This
No,
is
these are seriously important people.
seriously important people. And we are coming to the seriously important end of our broadcast.
Boy, I think I got
It
nothing
says,
but blank,
it says
blank
a minute
pages
and
now.
50 seconds to go, but we started with a minute ahead of schedule, so we're probably right there. And so I will say good night, good afternoon, good
I think
morning.
we're going to say goodbye to everybody.
We have
We've got
to.
nothing else to say.
We've got hours of stuff to say, but
Goodbye, everybody.
bye-bye.
To all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I want to hope gentle rain